You must have certainly seen a video, a cartoon, or anything about this hunting wolf who is the villain, or rather the antagonist of Puss in Boots 2, The Last Wish. Today we'll explore the legends and figures that may have inspired this character. Warning, spoilers ahead. If you're new here, please subscribe and like this video. It really motivates me to continue creating content. Firstly, this wolf we're talking about here is the big bad wolf. And before anyone says, oh no, he's not the big bad wolf, he's Death. There's a movie poster with him in front, and above him it says Big Bad Wolf, which would translate to Big Bad Wolf. So yes, he is the big bad wolf. So you don't get confused. In this same universe, there's another wolf, which is that one from Shrek, isn't it? He dresses up as a granny and stays with the three little pigs. But I have an explanation for these two wolves. The first one, which is from Shrek, is clearly inspired by the more childish legends of the big bad wolf. That practically everyone knows those famous stories from the Green Brothers. The big bad wolf from Puss in Boots 2 is much darker. And much cooler too, right? He was likely inspired by the original, more macabre big bad wolf legends. However, another legend or figure is more clearly the inspiration. At least after you find out who the wolf really is. And this figure is the Green Reaper, or in Portuguese, the Ceifador. This is because the wolf wears a dark hood, has two swords that look very much like two scythes, and of course his name, which is Death. Let's talk a little now about the Green Reaper. The Green Reaper, also known as Reaper, is a figure that exists throughout history in the world, representing death. When he appears in drawings, series, movies, or anything else, he is usually in his skeleton form, or someone very thin who wears a dark hood and carries a scythe to reap the souls. The Green Reaper may have originated during the 14th century. It was at this exact time that Europe was suffering from the Black Plague. The bubonic plague was, until then, the worst disease crisis, with several outbreaks occurring successively. So the Europeans not only knew death as it was always present, anywhere they looked. Death was part of their daily lives. So of course they would end up finding a way to physically represent it. But why then would a hood, a scythe, and a skeleton be part of this creature? Well, the skeleton represents the body's form after death. The hood and black clothing referred to the presence of the priests who performed the funeral rites. The scythe can be related to many things. For example, most of those who died at that time were peasants. So just as they reaped their crops, death reaped their souls. Another explanation could also be related to the god Kronos, or Saturn, from Greek and Roman mythology, who had a scythe and represented time, represented the harvests, and even swallowed his own children, showing that no one was safe from time. Okay, we understand who the Green Reaper is, but then why was a wolf chosen instead of a skeleton to be Death in Puss in Boots? In mythology, some wolf figures represent death, like Fenrir in Norse mythology, who brings about Odin's demise. The jackal-headed Anubis plays a similar role in Egyptian mythology. However, the wolf's presence in fairy tales likely contributed more to its association with death, as wolves often bring about the end of various characters in the original stories, as we'll explore now. Little Red Riding Hood, when we first hear it, it's told that Little Red Riding Hood and the grandmother come out happy, saved from the wolf by a hunter and everything else. It seems that's not exactly how it occurs initially. The first version of the story was mentioned by the Frenchman Charles Perrault. Little Red Riding Hood was a very beautiful young girl. Her mother loved her very much and her grandmother even more. So one day, Little Red Riding Hood's mother baked a cake, took a jar of butter, and told her to take it to her grandmother's house, who lived in another village. The girl then immediately started her journey, until at a certain point she met a wolf. This wolf thought about devouring her right there, however, as there were some woodcutters around. He started to talk and asked where she was going. The girl, unaware of the danger she was in, said she was going to her grandmother's house to bring a cake and butter. The wolf asked where this grandmother lived, and Little Red Riding Hood not only said that she lived in another village, but even gave a reference point. She said she lived in the first house in the village that came after the mill. At that moment, the wolf said he would also visit her, and wanted to race Little Red Riding Hood to see who would get there first. He took a shortcut, and she took another. He got there first. He knocked on the door, and the grandmother who was lying down asked who it was. The wolf said it was her granddaughter, and she had cake and butter. The grandmother then told him to pull the door latch and it would open. He opened it and devoured the grandmother and hid under the sheets. When Little Red Riding Hood arrived, she entered the house, and the wolf, pretending to be the grandmother, told her to leave the pot of butter and the cake on the table. Then he told her to take off her hood and go to the bed. Little Red Riding Hood then begins to say those famous phrases about how big and hairy her grandmother's legs were, about the snout, about the big eyes, and so on. In the end, the wolf devours Little Red Riding Hood and leaves with no hunter or woodcutter coming to her rescue. In this story, as you saw, the wolf was a kind of omen, a warning of death for Little Red Riding Hood. She may not have been the main inspiration for the creation of the death character in Puss in Boots, but it's an example. I've seen a lot of people saying that the main source of inspiration for the creation of the hunter wolf was a German tale. However, most people don't specify which tale they're referring to. The few who do mention it say it's called The Wolf and the Children, or The Wolf and the Child anyway. There really is a tale with a name more or less like that, called The Wolf and the Seven Children, which was collected by the Grimm brothers. The original version was not found, but it appears to have belonged to the Hassenpflug family. Other places say that this tale would have been inspired by another story of a child who was devoured by a kind of ghost. But anyway, I'm not sure because I didn't find much about it. However, the peculiar tale of the Green brothers unfolds as follows. Once upon a time, there was an old goat who had 7 little children and loved them all. But one day she had to go out to the forest to gather food. So she called her children and warned them that she was going out, and told them to be very wary of the wolf, that if he entered the house he would devour them all, skin, hair, everything. She said that he always tried to disguise himself, but you could recognize his voice, which was rough, and his feet, which were dark. The children told her that she could rest easy and go away, that they would be very careful with this so-called wolf. So the old goat went to the forest, leaving the 7 little goats alone. It wasn't long before someone knocked on the door. The children asked who it was, and the voice replied, saying it was their mother, for them to open the door. But the children recognized that harsh voice. It was not a gentle and soft voice like their mother's. Surely that was the wolf. The wolf was very frustrated, but he went to a vendor, bought some chalk, ate it, and made his voice softer. He returned to the goat's house and knocked. This time, they believed him. However, when he put his paw inside, they noticed that it was dark. So, they closed the door again. The wolf went to a builder and asked him to plaster his paws because they were broken. The builder said he wouldn't do that because he found it very strange. However, the wolf said that if he didn't, he would be the one to get devoured. So now, with his paws looking white, he went again to the little goat's door, knocked on the door, said he was their mother, and they believed him. When they looked at the paws, they were white, so they thought it really was their mother, and the wolf entered the house. When the children realized it was actually the wolf, they became desperate and went to hide in various places. One jumped under the table, the second in the bed, the third in the stove, the fourth in the kitchen, the fifth in the closet, the sixth under the sink, and the 7th in the clock box. But the wolf found them all, and without much trouble swallowed them all. However, he didn't find the youngest son, who was in the clock box. After that, he went to rest under a tree. Upon returning, the mother discovered the door wide open and the house in disarray. Her youngest son recounted the events that had transpired. Then the mother went looking for the wolf and found him sleeping under the tree. She opened his belly, took out her children, and filled the wolf's belly with stones. When he woke up, he was very thirsty, so he went to a well to try to drink water. But when he leans over, the stones make him fall into the well. The wolf becomes desperate, but the stones pull him down. In the end, he drowns. The most macabre part of all is that in this last part, the goat and her 7 children are dancing around the well, saying that the wolf is dead. Well, this story, as you could see, is basically the same thing as Little Red Riding Hood. Even the moral of the story would be the same, that you should not talk to strangers, or in the case of the 7 little goats, you should not open the door to two strangers. The big bad wolf remains the villain of the story. And just like in the Puss in Boots movie, he is always trying to go against the protagonist, trying to kill him. At the end of his stories, he always teaches a lesson. Now, we understand why the big bad wolf representing death was chosen in the movie. But what about his whistling, his main characteristic? For that, I considered two possibilities. The first is that they put it in the movie simply to make it darker, and the second is that they may have taken this from two stories. The first one is very famous, which is the Three Little Pigs. The wolf's whistle is to indicate that he is coming, that death is coming. In the Three Little Pigs story, the wolf's blow also symbolizes death. To better understand, let's examine the original version of the story. This story, like the other two, became known because of the Green Brothers. But the first time it appeared was through the English writer James Halliwell, and then it was rewritten by Joseph Jacobs. Once upon a time, there was an old sow with her 3 children, and since she had no more means to raise them, she asked them to go out and seek their fortune. The first one went out and met a man with a bundle of straw, and he asked for some to build his own house, and the man gave it. Once the little pig completed building his house, a wolf showed up and requested to come inside. The little pig refused to let the wolf in, so the wolf huffed, puffed, knocked down the house, and ate the first little pig. The second son found a man selling plants and asked for some to build his own house. He went there, built it, and again the wolf showed up asking to come in. The wolf blows down the second little pig's house after being denied entry and devours the pig. The third brother finds the man selling bricks. He takes some and builds his own house. And again, the wolf shows up. Only this time, when he blows, nothing happens. So he tries to trick the little pig inside. He tells the two of them the next day to go get turnips, butter, and a mixer at a fair nearby. The little pig agrees, but goes before the wolf arrives the next day. When the wolf finds out about this, he becomes furious and tries to enter through the chimney to devour the little pig. And well, from that moment on, the story gets very bizarre. The little pig had left a boiling cauldron under the chimney. The wolf falls inside. The little pig covers the cauldron, and the dinner ends up being the very wolf who had eaten his brothers. In this case, there isn't really a whistle in the story, right? But you understood the parallel with the wolf's blow, right? Well, besides this story of the 3 little pigs, there is also another one, which is not really a tale. It's more of a parable, I don't know, but it's called The Boy and the Wolf. According to this story, there was a boy who was taking care of a flock of sheep, and his parents had told him that if he saw a wolf coming, he was supposed to whistle, or according to other versions, scream. But the boy always fooled people. He whistled without having seen the wolf, and when people arrived to help, he was lying on the ground, laughing. But one time he really saw the wolf, and when he whistled, nobody came to help. He tried alone to scare off the wolf, but he was bitten and almost died. And when he arrived at his house, all hurt, to tell what had happened, his grandmother said that when someone tells a lie, they will always think he is a liar. Oh, guys, I was almost forgetting another story, which is called The Wolf and the Boy, which is even similar to the story I just told, right? But it can also be called The Wolf and the Child, The Wolf and the Kid, and so on, where the wolf always plays a flute before the feast, which can also have a relation there with the wolf's whistle from the movie. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to rate the video with a like or dislike, subscribe, and comment with a topic suggestion for the next video. Thanks,